Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode one. It is the first ever episode of the Summer Sports Spectacular, and I am very, very excited for this. If you're a new listener, if you're just joining alongside the Jordan and Drew Sports Crew fandom, this is the Summer Sports Spectacular. My name is Jordon Lawrenz, joined alongside Drew Skyberg, and what the Summer Sports Spectacular is all about. Drew, take it away.
So the Summer Sports Spectacular is going to be our 10 episode series. We're going to watch a bunch of old games, maybe not that old. Like, for example, today's game is going to be the 2005-2006 National Championship, which was the Rose Bowl that year. And it was number 1 USC versus number 2 Texas. And what we're going to do, we're going to analyze this game. We're going to put it into context of like how big this game truly was. And we're going to share our thoughts on the game, some key players, some big moments, and it's going to be a fun time. And we're going to do that for other episodes as well, for other sporting events. So like, there's going to be some World Series games, some NBA Finals, some more college football stuff, college basketball stuff. And it'll be a great time. I'm really looking forward to get started in episode 1.
Let's do it. The Rose Bowl. What's the national championship for the year? I still find that interesting how they did it back in the day. One of the bowls was designated as the national championship game, and it changed because I'm pretty sure the year prior, USC won, I want to say the Sugar Bowl. I would have to double check, but I think they beat Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl to win the national championship. So, I mean, we can check that later, but like I said, it's so interesting how times have changed and how these games now, obviously with the college football playoffs, you've got two of the big games and then they move into the national championship. But we're used to there being a national championship game, but back then the Rose Bowl was the national championship game. So, I mean, you're winning the Rose Bowl and the national championship all in one. But before we get there, let's look at the season, right? Let's look at the season and the rule changes. So, Drew, I wanted to go over these because I found a few interesting ones here. We're going to talk about the rules changes and the conference changes before we get into things. First of all, with the rules, 7 additional conferences would join the Big Ten in adopting the instant replay systems. This is huge, right? We're talking the 04-05 season. 7 more conferences are adding instant replay, and these refs were kind of rough in this game, and instant replay came into effect quite a few times. So instant replay, we're talking, like I said, 04-05. This is still new. They're still working it into things, and this got adopted here for 7 more conferences along with the Big Ten. They removed intentional from the rule regarding spearing. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, so spearing's like when you like lead with your head into another player. So it's like helmet to where you lead with your helmet. So I guess they removed the terminology spearing from the rule book is what you said.
They removed intentional from the word spearing. So I guess every spearing they're just saying is intentional.
Well, yeah, I think that's what they are implying there. I'm assuming.
I don't know how it wouldn't be as the way you explained it. Like obviously you know what you're doing when you're going for the tackle. Next up, leaping will not be called on a defensive player lined up within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage unless he lands on other players. Eliminating the legal clipping zone to make clipping illegal anywhere on the field. In an old episode for On This Day, we talked about clipping, right? Didn't it used to have like a 25-yard penalty, if I remember right?
Yep, that was the one. And we used the NFL official rule book to really clarify what we were talking about to our viewers.
Yeah, you read that, and there's some interesting stuff in there. So last rule change to ensure more consistent enforcement, a list of acts considered unsportsmanlike conduct is added, including the throat slash, high stepping and diving into the end zone, unchallenged among others. Spontaneous celebrations by players are allowed, provided they are not prolonged taunting or bringing attention to themselves. This is pretty big here because we know how big taunting is. We know how big celebrating is. And they're just adding more enforcement to unsportsmanlike conduct, which honestly, it's some of the most annoying things in the world when after a guy scores a touchdown, he celebrates and they call a penalty. Like, just let the dude be happy. He just scored a touchdown. So anything you want to touch on, or should we get to these conference changes?
Let's get to the conference changes.
Few things here that kind of caught my eye. First of all, it says a major conference realignment occurred prior to the 05 season when 18 teams in Division 1A changed conferences. I also noticed they call it Division 1A back in the day. Temple was expelled from the Big East Conference, while Army ended its brief affiliation with the CUSA, resulting in both schools becoming independents. Temple's not independent anymore, though.
I don't think so, no. I'm not sure what conference they're part of now, but...
Army's independent, but Temple's not. Boston College left the Big East to become the 12th member of the ACC, allowing the league to split into 2 divisions and hold an annual championship game. Cincinnati, Louisville, and South Florida left CUSA to join the Big East. Texas Christian University also left the CUSA to become the Mountain West Conference 9th member. A lot of people leaving the CUSA. Despite its losses, CUSA added 6 schools to increase its membership to 12. So here we go. Marshall and UCF came in, along with Rice, Southern Methodist, Tulsa, and UTEP. All came in to the CUSA. So a lot of moving parts here. And it says, like the ACC, the CUSA split into 2 divisions and started a conference championship game. It seems like at the time, if you didn't have 2 divisions, you didn't have a conference championship game, which I find very weird. But now we know a lot of these conferences, even today, they keep getting bigger and bigger. And they do indeed have multiple divisions. 2 more things. The WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, added Idaho, New Mexico State, and Utah State. And then the Sun Belt picked up Division I, and then this is Division I AA independents, Florida Atlantic and Florida International. So the Division I-A and Division I AA, I'm not too familiar with the whole thing. Are you at all?
I'm assuming the Division 1 AAs, like the smaller D1 schools, is how they're grouping them, but I'm not sure. I'm unfamiliar with the A and AA, but we'll go with it.
I mean, we were young at the time, and it's not like I really looked into the whole things, but that seems about right because it says AA independents, Florida Atlantic and Florida International. So the AA, it's almost like you have the FCS and FBS. Kind of seems like that whole thing, if I'm reading into it right, but we're not going to say anything that would end up being wrong. So let's look at these teams now. We know in the Rose Bowl, the national championship game, Pete Carroll's USC is the #1 seed. Drew, this team was the preseason #1 favorite to win it all, and they didn't leave that AP poll #1 slot all year. That is remarkable. We don't see anything like that anymore.
I mean, with a school, you see Alabama today maybe being an exception, but like you never see a team like stay #1 like the whole year. So that's remarkable.
Yeah, Alabama's always in like top 5 or even top 10 if they have down, but staying #1 the entire bit of the year, that's huge. And guess what? Texas, they were #2 the entire year. So when we talk about this game and when Drew said, biggest game of the year, nothing can touch it, that's perfectly said because right away when the game started, they said, we've been waiting for this game all year. It is undoubtedly the 1 seed against the 2 seed. And let's look at Texas, right? Texas played, they were 13-0. So that gives away the result of the Rose Bowl for you. So if you haven't seen it, too bad. I mean, go watch it. You're supposed to watch these things ahead of time. But Texas, 13-0. First game of the year, they beat Louisiana 60-3. They beat Ohio State. Ohio State was the 4th seed at the time. They beat OSU 25-22. They beat Rice 51-10. Then they beat Missouri 51-20. Then they beat Oklahoma 45-12. Beat 10 seed Texas Tech 52-17. Beat OSU OSU is Oklahoma State, I should clarify, 47-28. They beat Baylor 62-0.
Yikes.
They beat Kansas 66-14. They beat Texas A&M 40-29. Are you ready for this one? They beat Colorado 70-3. And then our championship game here, which I won't say the score of just yet because we're going to talk all about it. But Drew, this team's unstoppable. I mean, 70-3, 62-0. They're just, as the year went on, it seemed like they're getting better.
And in the championship game, we saw why they were 13-0 undefeated season because, I mean, we'll get into their offense, but when you have a guy like Vince Young and you're able to just play the option game, essentially is what they did with their freakishly big offensive line. And you have a guy who's Vince Young, who's like 6'5", he's like 240, 250, and he's just a freak of nature. Oh, I couldn't imagine trying to tackle that guy. Like, did you?
It's remarkable.
There's
no way. Run away if you see him coming after you. So now it's time for USC. They won the championship the year prior, as I said before, but this year finished 12-1. They came up short in the end. We'll get to it soon, but this team opened the year beating Hawaii 63-17. They beat Arkansas 70-17. They beat Oregon 45-13. Oregon was the 24 seed. They beat the 14 seed Arizona State 38-28. Beat Arizona 42-21. They beat the 9 seed Notre Dame in a close one, 34-31. That's probably the closest game besides that Texas and Ohio State game we've seen. They beat Washington 51-24. Beat Washington State 55-13. Beat Stanford 51-21. Beat California 35-10. Beat 16 seed Fresno State 50-42. Close one there, I guess. And then they just absolutely destroyed the 11 seed UCLA 66-19. You're looking at a team who played 5 teams in the top 25 and pretty much blew them all out. Texas only played 3 teams in the top 25, but still, I mean, Texas was dominated against their teams as well. Drew, we'll talk more about UFC and their offense, especially in this game, but I mean, it's more of the same, right? These 2 teams unmatched. I mean, these games aren't even close.
Yeah, and for USC, when you have a dynamic duo of Lendale White and former Heisman winner Reggie Bush, which we'll talk about. They were unstoppable, and Matt Leinert's no bad quarterback as well. I mean, he finished 3rd in the Heisman voting. I saw, or like you said,
Correct.
and he was very good in that game. I mean, the second half he was, but like the first half was a little rough. But I think he was able to really set up Reggie Bush and Lendale White very well in that game on some short passes, because that was really his game, as we saw. But we'll talk about
that was a trio right there between those 3, and that's why USC was so dominant. Texas, at the end of the year, they ended up scoring the most points out of anyone, 652 points in 13 games. I mean, I don't know what that equates to, but that is just insane. So what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about our game, right? And then after the game, we'll talk about the awards given out for the year. And this episode will end with the Heisman Trophy debacle, because that is wild what happens there. We'll talk all about it, but let's get into this game, right? Rose Bowl, Drew, 2005, USC and Texas. It's on ABC. This is going to be my question every time when we get into things. What are your first impressions as you turn the game on?
Right when I turn the game on, I hear a guy named Keith Jackson and Dan Fouts, and I have no idea who these guys are. So I do some research is my initial thing, because I think commentary is first, because I think we should put into context who the commentators are, because these guys we don't hear anymore doing national championship games. And plus the game was on ABC, so did some research. Keith Jackson, this was his last play-by-play game ever. This was his last game, and then he retired. So that I found that interesting. And the way his play-by-play style, I don't know, like Jordan,
very old school.
I would agree.
I mean, it's like everything. You can start up in again in a second here, but everything felt pretty new about it, right? It was on ABC. I mean, the crowd was full of it. Some of the graphics were like maybe a little outdated, but they still felt too out of the realm. But Keith Jackson, boy, oh boy, he slowed the game down. He made sure he called mostly everything old school at its finest. I mean, he missed a thing or two there, here and there. You could tell at certain times he was off a little bit, but I mean, it's Keith Jackson, right? And if we would have come in and not known anything about the guy and we would have just said terrible things about him because he was old and it's not what we're used to, we'd be idiotic, because this dude has done a lot. And I mean, I thought he did a fine job. Dan Fouts, pretty good color guy. I really enjoyed his work.
Yeah, I enjoyed both the guys, like you said. And one other thing is the game was in HD we found on YouTube, and that's always great to see, considering the game's 16 years old. We got to watch it in HD, so I thought that was a treat. And then I just thought, like, not seeing for the jerseys, there's no last names on the back. I don't know if you noticed that too. Yeah, so I found that interesting, because now these days you see even college sports, you see the athletes, they have their name on the back, last name on the back for almost every sport, maybe, like for like D1 at least.
Most of them, yeah.
Most of them do, at least. So I found that interesting. And I don't know, I think replay, because you mentioned the replay was kind of new this year, and we noticed they went to replay a lot.
Far too many times.
Yeah, and I'd say 5-6 times, maybe, even
probably 5 is safe bet,
because they were really wanting to make sure they got these calls right. And I don't know, I found that interesting, because like replay was the new thing back then. Like that was the new thing. You got to use it, make sure you get the call right.
Some of them too, like we'll talk about that interception where the guy had the 1 foot in the back of the end zone. Clearly an interception. And the official, when you watch the replay, he wasn't even looking at his feet. We'll talk about it, but I mean, I feel like they kind of just bailed themselves out at times with the replay.
Yeah. And I think with that, I think we should start getting into the game recap. I think we should talk the first quarter. We should talk about my first thing I want to talk about from the first quarter was all the fumbles. Butterfingers left and right for both teams, especially Texas at the start. But
Oh yeah, let's get into it. Matt Leinart, by the way, will set the stage. USC gets the ball first. Matt Leinart, 37-1 as a starter for this team. And obviously, Drew mentioned the running backs they have, they're talented. This is a very good USC team, 3-0 to start the game. So maybe a little jitters. Maybe they just had some nerves. I mean, they're playing a very good Texas team, and they punt. And we should mention USC third worst in net punt average. So their special teams are not good. But when you're scoring 60 points a game, how many times do you even need to punt the ball? So I kind of understand it because you have a few missed punts here and there that really brings it down. They punt, Texas gets it and fumbles. Texas fumbles the ball and USC gets it back. And right away, USC runs in, touchdown, 7-0. Before we get there, though, did you see that helmet to helmet hit where the dude's helmet flew off of his head and they didn't call it a penalty? I was shocked.
Dan Fouts did not like that at all.
No.
And I don't blame him. Like in today's day and age, you would see that. The guy could have even got ejected for that, I think, in today's day. I think they might have called could have been targeting. Guy could have flagged 15 yards and he's out of the game. And just it's crazy that's the nice thing about doing our summer sports spectacular is we can see something 16 years ago that, hey, that would have been called probably a 15-yard penalty ejection today. And that now 16 years ago, no call whatsoever. And that I found that extremely odd.
And they would have definitely taken the player into the back, concussion protocol. They would have looked through everything. Just goes to show, like you say, 16 years ago this game was and how far we've progressed with all these concussions, head injuries. I mean, football especially really did it in. So USC leads 7-0 off the rushing touchdown. Texas gets the ball. They go for it on fourth down around midfield. Can't convert. They can't do it. And USC gets the ball back. And there was a call here. Did you hear about the incidental face mask? I found this intriguing.
I did hear the official call an incidental face mask, and I found that odd. That's not something you hear that often today. So
no, and it was a 5-yard penalty for an incidental face mask. I was blown away by this. I just didn't expect it at all. I don't know how it can be incidental and how they can rule what's incidental and what's not. I don't know, but we talked about it with the spearing too. They took the word incidental out, so they've got some rule things here that they got to work through. And USC gets the ball, like I said, they go, and they can't convert on fourth down now. So we're looking at two teams, USC up 7-0, end of the first quarter. Took 35 minutes for the first quarter. USC 7-0 in a very defensive game. Drew, we didn't expect this at all.
No, when you have, like we've mentioned all the weapons, Vince Young, and then another guy I want to mention, David Thomas, the tight end for Texas. He was a force this game. He had a bunch of receptions. He was Vince Young's number one guy the whole game. And then also with Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Lendell White, these guys, it's just an offensive powerhouse for both teams. And what you mentioned, the points per game for both teams, you expected it almost maybe a shootout even at this point. But both defenses really stepped up, I thought. Texas was really aggressive the whole game. They were really trying to contain Reggie Bush, which I think they did a fairly good job for most of the game. I don't know about you.
Yeah, they got a little too aggressive in the second half, but that's when it got into a shootout. And we'll get there here in a minute. So let's start. Second quarter, right? USC eventually gets the ball back, and you want to talk about a fumble. Maybe one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't remember. Do you remember who fumbled at this point?
Reggie Bush tried to do a lateral back.
It was Reggie Bush.
And
okay. Yeah, please explain it because it's terrible.
Reggie Bush, he's on this phenomenal run. It was like this is the Heisman runner. This is the Heisman guy. He won the Heisman, or he won it, and it kind of like solidified like this is the guy, and he just ruins it by on this run. He's like 30 yards maybe on the 30-yard line.
Probably around there, yeah.
And he's looking for a teammate before he gets tackled to flip it. And he tries to flip the ball, and while he tries to flip the ball, he's getting tackled. So the ball he just fumbles the ball. He just loses it. He was looking for someone to lateral it to, and it was probably one of the worst decisions he could have made because he already made this big gain and he was trying to make this superstar play that was impossible to make because there's like nobody close who could have like made probably the lateral, and he lost the ball. And Pete Carroll at halftime, I don't know if you heard what he said. He was very, very upset. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know why Reggie lateraled it. It was kind of a dumb mistake on our part or something." And I thought that was very interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, we should talk about that too. Pete Carroll, Seahawks coach, is the coach of USC at this point. I mean, I knew he obviously was a college coach, but I didn't realize it was this time. So fun to see him. Didn't he look the same? I mean, the dude really looked the same as he does now. I was very, very intrigued by
Yeah,
that. But just, I mean, he doesn't age, I guess. So, like you said, though, the guy who's trying to pitch it to wasn't even looking. Like there was Texas people all over the ball. They get it back, and then David Pino. He is going to be a discussion coming up. The kicker for Texas makes a career-long 46-yard field goal. USC now leads 7-3, so things are moving, right? Texas then comes and gets another touchdown. Moving on, Texas gets a touchdown. I mean, the guy's knee was clearly down, I said in my notes, but they didn't do anything. I mean, we talk about replay, how they went back to it and looked over and over. They didn't look at it. Why did USC not challenge this?
well, I think the extra point, they got it off really fast. I know they missed the
Yes.
extra point, but they were going really fast. They didn't care if they missed the extra point or not. They were going like, we gotta get this snap. We gotta get the ball off. So they can't challenge or review this. And they did it, but as a result, they missed the extra point.
And our boy Dan Fouts he thought for sure this was going to get called back. And he was irate when they didn't look at it again or anything. And then I loved it. After this, they showed like the booth upstairs where the replay guys are. It looked like a prison cell compared to what we see now. Like they were in this tiny little booth. There was three guys in there. One of them didn't even have a chair. One dude was standing, and one guy had like a little thing in front of him. I don't even know if it was a computer or what, but they were in a prison cell up there. It looked terrible. But like you said, they rushed it. Extra point is no good. David Pino misses it. Texas up 9-7. And hey, Texas scores again. Texas gets a rushing touchdown. They now lead 16-7. And keep in mind here, all rushing touchdowns so far. I believe there's only one passing touchdown all game.
Yep.
Yeah, and that comes later. We'll get to it. So Texas is up 16-7 before the half. Mario Danello hits a career-long 43-yarder for USC just to get him a little closer. It's now 16-10. Texas leading at halftime. Drew, we know Texas gets the ball at the start of the second half, but first half impressions, I mean, still, it's 16-10. You see some games final at that score, but for these two teams, like we said, still relatively low scoring, and we are waiting the second half. Vince Young just goes off.
You are right. The Vince Young show just starts, and like I've mentioned before, they run some shotgun. He gets a snap, and he's rolling right, and he rolls left, and he's gonna either pitch the ball or he's just gonna take it. Was the game they ran an option a couple times. They ran the triple option a few times, and then sometimes when they run the play action, and then he's in the pocket, he sits back, and if someone comes and tries to blitz, he just runs the other way. And he had a few plays where he got some 30-yard gains on just running, just scrambling.
So
it was
good.
it was incredible. I was thinking, right in my head, I was thinking this guy's like kind of like Lamar Jackson, not like the build, but like kind of the idea where he's gonna look to scramble and he's gonna beat you with his legs a few times.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. He looked to me like Uriah Hall, a UFC fighter. You obviously won't know him, but that's who he looked like to me. But let's get into the second half. Texas gets the ball, 3-and-out. 3-and-out to start the second half. USC gets it. Boom. Rushing touchdown. USC now leads 17-16. So you're seeing that missed extra point coming into play. They're down by 1 point until Texas QB keeper, the one and only Vince Young, gets himself a touchdown, 23-17, and it is a shootout from here. USC's ball, 4th-and-1, and they rush it in, 24-23. Texas gets the ball, moving back, and here they go. 31-yard field goal, chip shot, right? No, this was terribly missed. I mean, about as far right as you could imagine. Sure, he was on the right hash. He wasn't centered. But this thing wasn't even close. And then Reggie Bush has this fantastic flip. He was barely in for the touchdown, but he just made it, just had that ball across the pylon and it stayed in. So we're looking at 31-23 lead for USC. And I mean, from here, Texas, they redeem themselves. 36-yard field goal. The dude misses a 31-yard chip shot. It makes a 36-yarder from the same right hash. So we're at 31-26, and USC gets a passing touchdown where two Texas players collided. This was deadly.
I hated
One of them
watching
broke
this
his
part.
arm.
Oh, that was so tough to watch because, like, at least I could see in the replay. I saw the two guys collide, and one of those guys' arms, it did not look right. And I'm sure that was the guy who broke his arm because that was just a gruesome play to watch. And luckily, in USC's favor, I mean, it kind of worked out. They got the touchdown because there's two guys covering that ball. Like, that certainly was like that could have been intercepted, but just when two guys, collide, boom, down, touchdown.
Eyes on the ball. They just weren't looking anywhere else, and USC gets it. That's the first and only passing touchdown of the game. It is 38-26 USC. Texas gets the ball back. Guess who? Vince Young steps up, quarterback keeper, another touchdown. 4 minutes, 3 seconds left. Texas has all three timeouts. They're down 38-33. Drew, we know what happens, but you're a coach at this point, right? You're down 5. You have your timeouts left. You haven't been able to stop USC. They've been scoring nonstop in the second half. 4 minutes to go. Are you kicking an onside?
No, and listen why. I think they have the 3 timeouts, like you said, and I know they've been giving up points, but that shows how the Texas head coach, he truly trusts that defense, and I think he made the right call here. And I mean, as we know, kind of did, but
He sure did. The defense stepped up, but it was also thanks to some stupidity from Pete Carroll.
Yes.
Second down, they throw the ball, and it's incomplete. So USC had a chance to basically wipe the clock down to, I don't know, minute and a half, probably somewhere around there, depending on if Texas used their timeouts or not. But second down, incomplete pass, 2.5 minutes to go. Texas stops them. It's 4th and 2. Texas uses their first timeout with 2:13 to go. USC obviously goes for the ball, right? We're at about midfield at this point. Who do you give it to? Reggie Bush, and he gets stuffed.
That was a big play by that Texas defense, and you just saw guys like Roderick White step up, and there was their D tackle who's an All-American that year, and he just stuffs that gap. And as we saw there, then we got the Texas ball, and then some good things happen. And Jordan, you want to talk about him?
I mean, Vince Young, right? Who else? 2:09 to go. Texas has the ball at their own 44-yard line. Back-to-back blitzes, right? Texas is now 3rd down and 12. Pete Carroll sent the defense. I mean, they were just flying at Vince Young. He knew exactly what they needed to do. They got the pressure. And then here we go again. USC commits an incidental face mask, giving Texas a first down. I hate this penalty. I don't know why it's called, but that's just dumb by UFC at this point. Minute 20 to go.
That was not an incidental face mask. As we said, I looked at the replay. That was an intentional face mask penalty, to say the least.
Dude knew exactly what he was doing.
Yes.
I don't know what the whole incidental thing is. I don't know where that even came from and why they decided to call it. Because like I said, if you're an official, you can't deem what's incidental and what's not. The player knows exactly what they're going in to do. Why is it for the official to say? But like I said, minute 20 to go. And at my note here in all capitals, it says these officials are slow and never make a call immediately. And I say we go to the 5th review of the game for a clear no fumble. This dude was clearly down. His knee was by far down, and he fumbled 2 seconds later. But here we go, wasting time again. They go to review. And I should mention, right, I got up and did something, and I paused the game before the 4th quarter. There was an hour left in this game. So this 4th quarter took an hour. And I thought for sure, I'm like, oh, this is going overtime. It has to, right? And then I really wasn't keeping track of time. It was flying by at this point. 30 seconds to go. Texas takes a timeout. They're at the 8-yard line. 3rd down and 5. What do? They throw it, and it is incomplete. 4th down and 5. Vince Young runs it in. This dude, and it took a while too. He looked all around and he just decided to keep it, and boom, touchdown. USC waste their last timeout before the 2-point conversion. What was Pete Carroll thinking? Why? Why? There's 16 seconds left. You could get that ball, and we saw at the end of the game, they got close. They got past midfield. Why are you wasting your timeout before the 2-point conversion?
Yeah, I thought certainly the game could have went in overtime, like you said, with the time left, and they even had the opportunity to. And like you said, they were midfield, and Pete Carroll, he made a few dumb. I think at the end of the day, he truly got out coached. I think in the second half, and there like that play, for example, is just one of the ways that he truly just got out coached. And it's a shame because Matt Leinart was so close to getting them into field goal range, so close. But at the end of the day, he didn't, and Texas did win this game, 41-38.
I mean, that's what happened in the end. 16 seconds left. They got the ball at their own 30. So, I mean, you've got 16 seconds to go 70 yards, no timeouts. In college, a little easier because if you get the first down, they got to move the chains. They stop the clock. I like that rule, by the way. I like it when they stop the clock. I think that's good. In the pros, it wouldn't work, but in college, it's fine. So, Matt Leinart puts a little screen pass on, gets to the 33-yard line. So, we're past midfield now. I mean, that got us over 20 yards. 8 seconds to go. And Matt Leinart wastes all 8 seconds on this last play. I don't know what they were doing. You could do a little out route or even a screen again. Have a nice little bubble screen, even if you run 3 yards and go out of bounds. Just save a little time. I thought this was a rookie mistake by Matt Leinart, a quarterback who lost his second career game and with like 30-some wins. What did he even have?
37.
Yeah, 37-2 now after this game. But I thought it was a rookie move at the end with 8 seconds to go.
Yeah, he had a rough first half, and he really stepped it up that second half. And it's just that last drive, he was so close to just solidifying his college football legacy with a excellent. He could have had it, but at the end of the day, he didn't.
I mean, I wouldn't even say he had a rough first half. He had a good first 5 minutes, and then the rest was terrible because they showed like a split of like how he started and then how he was. I want to say he had like 100 yards at the start, and then he was like 2 for 10 or something.
Interception.
Yep. Yeah, with an interception and 15 yards or something. I mean, it really, really went down. But Vince Young, in the past 2 Rose Bowls now, had 447 passing yards and 392 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, and a passing touchdown. Named offensive MVP, and Drew, he deserved every bit of that award. This dude single-handedly put Texas on his back and won the national championship.
I think certainly his offensive line gets some credit, but
for sure,
too. I do agree. That last touchdown, if you talk about an iconic touchdown in a college football playoff, that's got to be up there. Like that scramble that when he had, like you said, he just had the ball and he made a play. He made a great play. He rolled to the right side of the end zone and got in there, and that was quite the play by Vince Young.
That was all she wrote, as they say, and Vince Young gets the job done. Let's look at some other bowl games. Unless you had any other comments on the game. I know there's a few guys you wanted to shout out, or did we touch on them all?
We touched on them all. I just wanted to comment about how Matt Leinart used a lot of screen passes the whole game.
So many.
And
did he not have a very good arm? Is that like were they kind of protecting him?
I'm not sure. Like he finished third in the Heisman, so obviously he had the skill, and I mean certainly he was talented. He kept the ball. Like, he didn't turn the ball over. So I mean he did once, but he did his job. And I just think having Lendale Thunder White was his nickname, and Reggie Bush I think those guys really helped him elevate his game. But
yeah, it's certainly a team effort for the USC. And also, did you think his stance was awkward? Like, I know he was a lefty, but like his little 3-step drop, it just seemed a little weird to me what he was doing.
Yeah, he seemed awkward when he was throwing the ball. I do agree.
Yeah.
I think just like his footwork seemed awkward too.
Maybe it was the footwork. And it was such a short drop. Like, took 3 steps, but he moved like a foot back. And by the time he did his drop, Texas was there. Like, they had pressure on him all game long, and ultimately led to the downfall. Matt Leinart just wasn't himself. We'll talk about all their stats in a minute. Let's look at some other bowl games here. The Fiesta Bowl. So on number 4, Ohio State beat number 5 Notre Dame 34-20. The Sugar Bowl, Saw number 11 West Virginia upset number 8 Georgia 38-35. Good game there, but I want to talk about a good game. Let's look at a great game. Orange Bowl. Number 3 Penn State beats number 25 Florida State 26-23 in 3 overtimes. Big game there in the Orange Bowl, 3 overtimes. And one thing I'm going to do here, Wisconsin, right? Where were they at this point? What was Wisconsin doing? They won the Capital One Bowl. Wisconsin was the 21 seed, and they beat the number 7 seed Auburn 24-10. I thought that was a big win. Pretty impressive from Wisconsin back in 05. Now let's look at some award winners, right? The Walter Camp Award, top player, goes to Reggie Bush, and the Maxwell Award goes to Vince Young. AP Player of the Award goes to Reggie Bush. I mean, Drew, these guys just dominated. And then we get to Lombardi Award. AJ Hawk, the one and only, wins the Lombardi Award. And Vince Young wins the Davey O'Brien Award. Matt Leinart wins the John Unitas Award. USC and Texas dominated the awards. And then we get to the Heisman. The Heisman, we talked about it. Reggie Bush wins the Heisman. Vince Young finishes second. Matt Leinart finishes third. However, in history, the Heisman for this year is vacant. Reggie had to vacate the award because the NCAA ruled him ineligible for the season due to receiving improper benefits. So I'm not sure the entire story behind it and what happened, but that is just a terrible way to end your year.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that's really tough for Reggie Bush. I mean, we know like at the time he still kind of won it, but like now just getting your name wiped away from history certainly isn't going to be the legacy he wanted to leave for himself.
I mean, poor guy, but kind of did it to himself, I guess, right? I mean, you certainly know what you're doing. So
probably some money, yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be something, a whole lot of stuff that was going on there. So we're going to finish it off with some stats for the season. Matt Leinart, 283 of 431, just averaged a 65.7%, 3,815 yards, 28-8 touchdown to interception ratio. So, I mean, he's throwing a few interceptions, but out of 283 completed passes, 3,815 yards. I don't know if these are all screen passes where they just get good blocks and they're running through, or if he's throwing some bombs, but either way, pretty good numbers for Matt Leinart. And then we're talking about the running backs here. Very, very split. Reggie White, or pardon, I combined the two. Reggie Bush, 200 attempts, 1,740 yards, 16 touchdowns. Lendale White, 197 attempts, 1,302 yards, 24 touchdowns. And Reggie Bush had 37 receptions for 478 yards, 2 touchdowns there as well. So Lendale White finishes the year 26 touchdowns overall. Reggie Bush with 18. I mean, these two, we knew Reggie Bush is more of the flex threat, but Lendale White seems like the finisher.
Oh, certainly. And that's what we saw in the championship game with Lendale White having 3 touchdowns, I believe. He was phenomenal that game. And when they got when they got in the red zone, it was just Lendale White, and he just powers his way through the Texas defense to get the touchdowns. And that was a great sight to see. He was more of like, he's like that modern day power back. I wouldn't say like a Derrick Henry kind of power back, but he's one of those guys who is a workhorse indeed.
Indeed, he is. And now for Texas, Vince Young, 212 out of 325 passing, 65.2%. So he 65.7 for Matt Leinart. So I thought they were pretty close. And sure enough, 3,036 yards passing for Vince Young, 26-10 touchdown to interception ratio. So, I mean, both of them, they're still in college. So they're throwing a few interceptions. Leading rusher for Texas, any guesses?
Was it the running back? Was it Vince? It's got to be Vince Young.
Yeah, it was Vince Young. And 155 attempts, led the team, 1,050 yards. He won by about 200 yards. He led 12 touchdowns for him. Ramonce Taylor had 12 rushing touchdowns. Jamal Charles had 11 rushing touchdowns, and Henry Melton had 10. So they have 4 huge running backs getting touchdowns left and right. Vince Young and Ramonce Taylor with 12, Jamal Charles with 11, Henry Melton with 10. You want to talk about a balanced rushing offense? Texas had it, and at the end of the day, they win it all. 13-0 on the year, win the Rose Bowl, 41-38. Stats for Vince Young in here. It says he was 30 of 40 passing. I didn't think he threw that many passes.
I didn't either. I thought he probably threw like 30 passes in the whole game because
Yeah.
he was running, he was scrambling left and right, and then they were a lot of handoffs too. It was mostly they were a running football team, and we saw that in the championship game as well.
Yeah. So he was 30 of 40, 267 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Matt Leinart, 29 of 40, 365 yards, one touchdown, one interception. As for rushing, Vince Young, 19 carries, 200 yards, three touchdowns. We've said it all about that man and what he did for the team, putting him on his back. As for USC, Lendell White, 20 carries, 124 yards with three touchdowns. Reggie Bush, 13 carries, 82 yards and a touchdown. So that wraps things up. Our Rose Bowl 2005. I thought it was a fantastic game once it got going. It took the first half, once after that first half finished, and then everyone was talking it over in the locker room. These two teams just put on a show for everyone, and we got the shootout we expected in the second half. I mean, Drew, I thought it was a fantastic game.
Oh yeah, I think that's got to be one of the best bowl games ever. It was back and forth, a bunch of lead changes, some ties in there, and just was an overall fantastic football game. It was a really clean game too. I noticed like there's not that many penalties at all.
Yeah,
other
no,
than a
not at
few
all.
initial-
I had that in my notes.
A clean football game. Some good commentary along with it. I recommend if you want to listen to what we just talked about, you should go watch that game. Incredible stuff.
Guess what we're going to watch next week, Drew? 1991 World Series from Major League Baseball. We're going back 14 more years. So we're going back 30 years from today, the 1991. We're going Game 7. So, I mean, I don't know who won the World Series in 1991. Maybe I will once we get going, but it's between the Braves and the Twins, those two teams playing in 91. I really like going into these games and not knowing what happens because I think that's just adds to it. If you would have told me that Texas won this game, it wouldn't have been nearly as enjoyable because seeing Vince Young do what he did, I mean, you just look at that guy and you say, wow. And we're going back to 1991 for baseball. What do you expect there? That's going to be fun.
I think that'll be a great game. I think of some names there. They got like Kirby Puckett, for the Twins. That's going to be the early years of the Braves. So there might be some Tom Glavine, maybe some Greg Maddux. I think John Smoltz maybe was there. I don't know if he was there yet, but
Possibly.
we're gonna see some big names, and we're gonna see a pitching duel. I bet. That's my guess. I don't know. I can't recall what happens. I think I know who wins, but I don't want to spoil. But
Yeah,
we'll leave it
no,
at that.
absolutely not. We don't want that happening at all. So that wraps it up. Episode 1 of the Summer Sports Spectacular. I thought it went well. We got 10 episodes of this. So we're going to adjust. We're going to figure out what worked, what didn't, what we want to put in, what we want to cut out, all that good stuff. But for episode 1, I thought everything went very, very well. Don't forget, listen to episode 12 if you haven't already, and then be back here next week, episode 13, Summer Sports Spectacular, episode 2. Who knows when we're going to have more bonus episodes? I mean, it is a loaded summer. Like I said before, I can't wait. I think it is going to be fantastic. 91 World Series next week. Drew, wrap things up for us.
All right, you can follow me on Instagram, Drew Skyberg, DrewSkyberg, and then also follow our Instagram, Jordon Drew _sports crew on Instagram.
Yes.
Eric, follow that. We're over 30 followers now.
Yes.
So that's gonna be great.
We're growing steadily day by day, and I can't wait to see how big this thing can get. We're hoping the Summer Sports Spectacular sets us up, gets new viewers, tell your friends parents. I mean, get them into it. I feel like this appeals to some of the older individuals. So if you're just sitting around one summer night on a Tuesday and you want to throw on the Rose Bowl, watch it with them, and then listen to our podcast, do it. Great little family bonding time. And I think it's going to be fantastic as we move on. So I'm Jordon Lawrenz. Follow me on Twitter at Jordon Law, JORDONLAW_PXP. Thank you for listening to Jordan and Drew, the Sports Crew, the perfect podcast for you.